From the steps of the Gemelli hospital to the pews of the Catholic churches all around the world, Catholics were rocked by uncertainty right at the beginning of the year. Pope Francis had fallen ill, and this time it sounded serious. The life of a man known for taking the church to the people and centering the disadvantaged had plunged into uncertainty, leaving the faithful fearing for the worst. As a young man, the pontiff underwent surgery for the removal of a part of one of his lungs after contracting pleurisy, an inflammation of the lungs, making him more susceptible to pneumonia. And being no stranger to bouts of flu and bronchitis, he had now been gripped by bilateral pneumonia and respiratory issues that sent him to the hospital for over a month. This was seen as the biggest health crisis that Pope Francis had experienced since his appointment in 2013. The word critical became a recurring theme in the daily updates of the Vatican on his condition.
And we pray and have faith and hope that all will be well, that he will come out of this and that God's will be done.
It was a dark time, and prayers for his recovery intensified as the Vatican provided more updates that sometimes painted what it called a complex clinical picture. He appeared visibly sick when he made a brief appearance on the balcony of the Gemelli hospital, but there was hope.
Grazie a tutti.
He would go back to the Vatican to recover. His first public appearance was also brief at St. Peter's Square, giving a glimmer of hope. On Easter Sunday, thousands of worshippers again thronged St. Peter's Square for one of the most important days of their religious calendar, Easter Sunday. For Catholics, this is a day to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus and also marks the end of Lent, which is a time for reflection. He again made an appearance at the famous balcony of the Vatican, but did not lead the Mass. Instead, in an unclear, thin voice, gave a blessing.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, buona Pasqua.
Thousands of worshippers cheered and clapped in excitement. This is the same day that he met the Vice President of America, J.D. Vance, in a private yet brief meeting. The Vatican reported that the meeting went well, but the next day, tragedy struck.
So breaking news this hour, Pope Francis dying at the age of 88. The Vatican confirming via video statement that he passed away this morning following a long illness.
The end of an era. Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Argentina on the 17th of December 1936, two Italian immigrants, Mario and Regina, Pope Francis dedicated his life to priesthood from early life after graduating from a technical school as a chemical technician. It was before he obtained his degree in 1969 that he was ordained as a Catholic priest and subsequently became a Jesuit provincial superior in Argentina between 1973 and 1979. He completed his doctoral thesis in theology in Germany in 1986, and in 1998 he became the Archbishop of Buenos Aires. He was appointed cardinal in 2001 by Pope John Paul II. In a historic first, Pope Benedict XVI resigned due to ill health, paving the way for Bergoglio to be named Pope in March 2013. Leaders from across the world reacted to the news of his death.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has conveyed condolences to Catholics in South Africa following the death of Pope Francis. Ramaphosa says the pontiff advanced a worldview of inclusion, equality and care for marginalized individuals and groups.
Just signed an executive order putting the flags of our country, all of them, all federal flags and state flags, at half-mast in honor of Pope Francis. So he was a good man, worked hard, he loved the world, and it's an honor to do that.
Here at home, Reactions also came in thick and fast.
He's a trailblazer in that he was not scared or afraid to face the thorny issues.
His love to be amongst the people. I think that to me is the epicenter of what his pontificate was all about.
The Pope represents a faith that transcends all traditional areas of divinity.
Time-honored rituals in the Catholic Church officially kicked in. The seat of the Holy See was vacant, and Cardinal Camerlengo Kevin Farrell took command of the Vatican, a role he played until the election of a new pope. Cardinal Farrell presided over the solemn assainment of death ritual. Pope Francis was revered for the less formal tone he set for his papacy, which he centered around humility, concern for the poor and the marginalized. His apartment, a two-room suite at the Casa Santa Marta, a guest house in the Vatican, was the embodiment of a life of humility he chose over the opulent apostolic palace apartments where some of his predecessors lived during their tenure. His remains were dressed in red and placed in a coffin. The body of a pope is usually put in a three-nested coffin, but Francis changed the rules, opting to be buried in a single coffin made of wood. Doctors confirmed that the pontiff had suffered a stroke, which led to a coma and irreversible cardiocirculatory collapse. His apartment was then sealed, and the mourning period began in earnest. All eyes around the world were on the Vatican to follow the pomp and ceremony, but Francis had scaled back, choosing humility over glorification. Popes lie in state for public viewing, and their bodies are traditionally placed on a pedestal. But again, Francis changed that, requesting the coffin was not on a pedestal. Thousands of Catholics from around the world flocked to the Vatican to view the body of the Pope. Prayers were held all over the world, including here at home.
This was probably the Pope who received the most abuse in the modern era, sadly very often from within the Catholic Church rather than from without. He was denigrated by some, told that he was a heretic or a populist, and called names that are not worth mentioning. But this never deterred him. He continued to teach in words that everyone could understand and which touched the hearts of those who listened. Despite the negativity, he remained always a person of joy, joy within himself and joy which he shared with others. And the joy was often expressed in his sense of humor and that very warm smile.
A service also attended by politicians.
Pope Francis will be remembered not only as the head of the Catholic Church, but as a revolutionary spiritual force who spoke to the conscience of humanity.
Pope Francis was the example and template of Ubuntu. He was a beacon of compassion, humility, and unwavering faith, and his papacy was marked by a tireless commitment to peace and justice.
A pope is buried between 4 to 6 days after his death. He died on Monday, the 21st of April, and the very next day, the funeral date was announced. He was to be buried on the 26th of April, and we traveled to the Vatican for this historic moment.
Coming to you from the Addis Ababa International Airport in Ethiopia, en route to the Vatican City for the funeral service of Pope Francis, which will take place tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. We know that scores of people have been making their way to the St. Peter's Basilica to view the body of the pontiff for the very last time. Since Wednesday, over 125,000 people have been going there. And this evening, one of the last ceremonies will take place, and that is the sealing of the coffin of Pope Francis.
And on the eve of his funeral, Cardinal Camerlengo once again presided over another solemn ritual, the rite of the sealing of the coffin. This started with the reading of a document listing the work of Jorge Mario Bergoglio and his important work and milestones. His face was then covered with a white silk cloth. The lid was then placed on the coffin, and above the lid was Francis's cross, coat of arms, and a plaque bearing the Pope's name, duration of his life and ministry. The wooden coffin was then sealed in preparation for the burial.
In the sermon, you're going to hear a conglomeration of the readings and also about the deceased.
He has been placed in the center of the community. He is there on the floor at the lowest place. One of his titles is the servants of God. So this is really a symbol of his life and commitment to service.
This is a special Catholic Mass for the dead, presided over by the Dean of the College of Cardinals, who was joined by at least 250 cardinals and other high-ranking members of the Church.
The Pope took the Church on a journey to the periphery, really reminding people to go back to the basics.
A dignified ceremony anchored in simplicity. And on the sidelines, some South Africans in Rome reflected on the impact that the Pope had in the world.
I have attended masses that he celebrated during his time still alive, and I must say that his presence, his aura in himself, it was quite a holy one, and you could actually experience that this man is prayerful, but at the same time this man wants to be with the people, maybe because of the figure he is, the security protocol, then sometimes he can't stay long, but I must say that he was one person who maybe reminded us as a church that we should really be with the people, not away from the people.
Over 150,000 people were estimated to be lining the streets of Rome as the Pope Mobile, which was turned into the hearse, embarked on Pope Francis's final lap. Another thing done differently was the burial site, which was outside the usual St. Peter's Basilica.
The late Pope had a great devotion to Our Lady and would always go to that famous icon in Santa Maria Maggiore. He's going to be buried near it.
The rite of burial took place between the Fossa and Pauline Chapel, which houses the icon of Mary Salus Papuli Romani. The Pope was now at rest, kicking off the 9-day mourning period for the Roman Catholics, marked by daily Mass the entire week. But also, the public could now line up along the Basilica of St. Mary Major to get a glimpse of the tomb of Pope Francis. This was a tightly controlled area with high security.
Let me just walk around to try and see if I can get a couple of people. Hey, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Where are you from?
I'm born in Jamaica, but I live in Miami.
Okay, cool. You're at the St. Mary's Major Basilica. Talk to us about why you're here. This is a big day, obviously, for Catholics.
Yes, I came on Thursday morning, and I didn't really have a plan, but I was lucky enough to be able to see him lying in state at the Vatican. And then yesterday I was able to see the end of his procession here, and the rosary prayer that they did outside. And then in the evening, and then I came back this morning. I pretty much came to Rome to see Pope Francis.
But it was also a time to prepare to usher in a new era for the Catholic Church. Cardinals were meeting daily. On the sidelines, conversations were being held with those who participated on the conclave.
I want us to talk about South Africa's role in this particular conclave. It's been participating for a number of years, and you have participated in at least two. Talk to us about that history with South Africa and the conclave.
I think one of the great things about having a church that's active as the one in South Africa has been is that that activity, that activism even, I would say, has been noted by the Vatican. And as a result, we have been given, I think, an important role to play. The fact that we've got 2 cardinals now, normally it would be 1 cardinal and wait until he dies and then the next one gets appointed. But we've got 2 cardinals, means that there's been a continuous line from when Cardinal McCann was made a cardinal, I think by Paul VI, through to John Paul II. Then I became a cardinal after Cardinal McCann died. And then before I get to that stage, Pope Francis has appointed Cardinal Brislin. So we have a continuous run of a representation in the conclaves.
The 7th of May was announced as the day of the start of the conclave. The excitement built up to the day with many predictions. Some talk in Rome and in international media was that a pope from Africa could possibly be appointed.
The Holy Spirit has already chosen the Pope. They are just here as cardinals to confirm who it is. And of course, in the peripheries, in the corners, there are those discussions who should succeed. But I think what is important is we need a Pope who is able to lead the church, to maintain, or rather a Pope who is able to be a true custodian of the faith.
The fathers of the church elect a person who seems to be suitable to carry out the mission that they perceive at that moment.
We can have many expectations, but at the end of the day, we need a leader, a pastor, a universal pastor, like Pope Francis, Benedict XVI, and all the popes that came before.
Excitement built up when firefighters of the Vatican were seen on the roof of the Sistine Chapel setting up the chimney.
The setup of the chimney obviously couldn't be, ignored, couldn't be avoided, because it was happening right here, and many of us could see, those firefighters right at the top of the Sistine Chapel, making sure that, of course, they are setting it up for the time when those votes start trickling in, and whether or not a decision has been made.
During this period, cardinals were isolated and were accommodated at the Casa Santa Marta with no outside interaction.
If a 2/3 majority is not reached by the 133 cardinal electors, then that chimney will be releasing black smoke.
The 7th of May was upon us, and the Vatican once again saw an increase in the number of people who gathered there. It was the beginning of a new era. The Dean of the College of Cardinals summoned cardinals to Rome for the election of Pope Francis' successor. The Vatican also announced that 2 of the cardinal electors could not participate in the conclave due to ill health. The process of electing a new pontiff kicked off with a prayer at the Pauline Chapel. They then proceeded to the Sistine Chapel. This is where they took an oath of secrecy, placing their hands on the gospel and taking an oath, binding them during and after the conclave. Then,
extra omnes.
It was everyone out and the voting began. At St. Peter's Square, the tension was thick as the crowds waited with bated breath for the results. Many had predicted that the Pope would not be elected by the first ballot. A 2/3 majority of the cardinals is necessary to elect a Pope. After every vote, ballot papers are burned on the stove along with an additive which releases color through the chimney of the Sistine Chapel. And on the first night, there was black smoke, signaling no decision had been reached. The crowds dispersed that evening and came back again for another round in the morning. But again, a conclusive result was not to be. It was only on the second day that a two-thirds majority of the cardinal electors reached a consensus. White smoke shooting through the chimney of the Sistine Chapel signaled a new era for Catholics. Excitement rang through St. Peter's Square,
Habemus Papam,
with the crowds eagerly anticipating Francis' successor.
Robertum Franciscum, Sancte Romane Ecclesiae, Cardinalem Prevost.
Cardinal Robert Prevost was the new pope. He's the first American to be chosen as a pope and the first from the order of St. Augustine.
He's from Chicago, and we're both visiting from Chicago. And so I think when we overheard people saying that, we just felt such a sense of pride and excitement that the city can be represented to the global scale and, just bring a lot of pride.
Very happy, very happy. First American Pope ever made.
And how does that make you feel?
Very happy because he's a fierce opponent of Trump.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
69-year-old Cardinal Prevost announced that he had adopted the papal name Leo XIV, marking the beginning of his journey as the Bishop of Rome.
What are you hoping this new Pope will bring?
I am very excited. I am very happy for his message about peace. I think it's very important.
Well, as an Australian, I'm encouraged to have an English-speaking Pope. That's great. I think he wasn't in the list of that people spoke about, so I don't know a lot about him. But I'm encouraged that when he spoke about continuing some of the reforms of Francis. He talked about building bridges. He talked about the need for peace, not only in the church, but peace in the whole world, and for the church to have a part to play in that.
Since his appointment, many heads of state, including that of South Africa, have visited him to wish him well. Leo XIV will preside over his first Christmas Mass as Pope, and this is known as the Solemnity of the Nativity of the Lord Holy Mass. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Lean Damnisi at the Vatican City in Rome.